Welcome back, everyone, to Plaid Couch. This is Fixing Franchises, and I'm your host, Tegan Jones. With the release of Jurassic World Rebirth, I will be going over the Jurassic World franchise. Now, this is a part 2. I did the first 3 films from Jurassic Park in a different video that is linked here, but it will also be linked in the description if you would like to go watch it. I do want to say this is all just for fun. I know a lot of people work on these movies to make them happen, and I am just some idiot on the internet. So this was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Since I mainly focus on just giving quick synopses of the fixes or movies I'm making, and in all honesty, in a vacuum, the concepts for at least the first 2 movies sound like they would work. I mean, the park finally opens to the public, and things, of course, go wrong. It is simple, but it is something we as an audience have kind of wanted for some time. And that isn't even a very new idea. It's just the Jurassic Park spin on it. I mean, we've had Jaws 3D or Blackfish. What the fuck is going on at SeaWorld? But overall, these are things where you read the cliff notes and you go, that sounds interesting. But for me, I feel the biggest reason these movies didn't live up to the hype they had or should have had is because of the person who was tasked with leading this franchise. I do not understand why Colin Trevorrow was chosen. His directing style is fairly bland, and his script writing is worse than that, in my opinion. I will say he does have some good written or directed scenes. His dialogue is awful, but like the opening to Fallen Kingdom is great until the Mosasaurus just leaps out of the water. That kind of kills it for me. But we also have the scene where the Therizinosaurus is hunting Claire in its territory, and it's super suspenseful for the most part. And I honestly believe that these movies would have been so much better if there was zero dialogue in it, because that is where Colin Trevorrow struggles the most. It is the most like cookie cutter dialogue, or like it's very Anakin and Padme dialogue as well, where it's like no one in their life would ever say this stuff, but he's like, no, this is what the people want to hear. The other big problem I have with this franchise is that the dinosaurs have essentially turned into an afterthought to focus on the hybrid dinosaurs, the cloning, and even the locust. Oh, fuck me. I still don't know who thought that this was what the franchise needed. The dinosaurs we became so fond of were no longer the monsters we needed to worry about, but were more or less just now props to either make the hybrids seem like a bigger threat or make the humans seem more badass. The biggest offender to this, in my opinion, is when Owen chokes the Dilophosaurus. Now, the Dilophosaurus is one of, if not the most terrifying dinosaur from the first Jurassic Park movie. And it gets treated as a joke to just show how cool and unstoppable Chris Pratt's character is. Now, I could honestly rant for hours about this franchise, but in doing research and looking at other videos and seeing what other people were saying, I came across a video by, I believe their name is Sahana. They did a really good job breaking down the Jurassic World trilogy and pointing out a lot of the flaws in what does and doesn't work for these movies. I highly recommend their video, and I will have it linked in the description as well, so please go watch that after you watch this. I'm going to try to format these a little differently than the last video. I'll start by talking about some of the dinosaurs that we will have with some significant screen time. Then I'll give a breakdown of each act. of course, we'll have the T-Rex and Velociraptors. For the herbivores, I want to highlight the Triceratops and its relatives, counterparts, the Ankylosaurus, the Stegosaurus, the Pachycephalosaurus, and several of the sauropods. For carnivores, I'm thinking Carnotaurus, Mosasaurus, and the Troodons. And one last thing, before I get into these movies, there was a good comment made in the last video that brought up the embryos in the Barbasol can, and how they were only good for so long, so the DNA would essentially be worthless. And during my rewatch of these movies, that just happened to be a line that went in one ear and out the other. I'm not perfect, but that is one of the reasons why I want to do this series, is because it can create that conversation and discussion, giving me more ideas and trying to maybe course correct when we do continuations on franchises such as this. Now, I am no scientist or DNA expert, but I believe Biosyn would have the resources and money needed to fund the extraction of all that dino DNA. Would it be perfectly completed? No. But I also believe that they would have several expeditions to both islands that just aren't shown on camera. One of the bigger reasons I feel like they wanted to get that as soon as possible and had such that tight time limit is because they wanted to make it easier to catch up to Engine. It's very much the DCEU trying to catch up to the MCU, where Engine was just so far ahead. Instead of having to go through all that research, they would just take what Engine had and trying to put their own little twist on it and make playing catch up a lot easier than what it was. This could also lead to some interesting points in this franchise. With the DNA being so delayed, Biosyn does have to put their own little twist and changes into that dino DNA, and this alters the look of several of the dinosaurs we've gotten to know and make them a little more scientifically accurate to what we know now. No, not you, you rat bastard. So, this Jurassic World movie opens with the boss of Biosyn that we saw in our Jurassic Park 3 talking and promoting Jurassic World. It's just one of those promotional package videos if you go to an amusement park or anything like that, of someone hyping up the attractions. He's talking about the innovations they made, and it ends by him talking about how he took over the mantle from Engine and his good friend, John Hammond. He talks about knowing the cost, but says that he spared no expense. We are then shown the park and all the different dinosaur exhibits and the attractions. We're following a family of 4 as they see everything around them. And eventually we make our way to the control room with our version of Claire and Owen. And they're standing and watching the monitors. The boss walks in being arrogant and boasting about the revenue that they can generate. However, some engineers point out that there's an issue in the Pachycephalosaurus pen. The boss then sends those 2 engineers and Owen to check it out. We cut to that family of 4 again as they continue to explore the park and enter into the gyrospheres. Again, I will say there are a lot of interesting things in this franchise, but it gets there and then it's just a letdown. The gyrospheres being one of those things where it's like, that is a very cool concept, and that is something I could see an amusement park like this doing. But the family of 4 gets in those gyrospheres, and they go on that herbivore safari. Once Owen and the engineers get to the Pachycephalosaurus pen, they finally see how many corners were cut when building the park. because the Pachycephalosaurus has destroyed a panel and it short circuits, causing the power in the park to cut out for just a short period of time. This then releases a lot of the security measures on the dinosaur pens. And the control room tries their best to evacuate the guests into the community center, but several guests are caught in a stampede of dinosaurs. This leads to Act 2, where Owen and the engineers are trying to leave the pen and are quickly met by velociraptors. We get a chase mirroring the motorcycle scene in Jurassic World, but instead of the raptors running with Owen and that group, they are actively trying to grab them off the vehicles. So it's kind of a mix of the tall grass scene from The Lost World and the motorcycle scene from Jurassic World. We then show the family of 4 trying to find their way back to the park, and they have run-ins with the Carnotaurus. And then there's also a similar scene to the river raft book sequence, but we have the Mosasaurus hunting them instead. It got out of its smaller container and has now started making its way towards the open water system throughout the park. The community center plot essentially revolves around Claire and the boss arguing about what they should do with the guest. Claire wants to open the main entrance so all the guests can escape, but the boss wants to keep everyone there to try to give themselves good PR by showing they are able to handle this situation, because he sees dollar signs in that. This eventually boils over as dinosaurs begin to breaking down the doors, and Claire releases the locks so the guests can leave. Owen and the family of 4 then make and find their way back to the community center. They enter the building, and we get that red emergency light sequence to really build that suspense and horror element. Troodons are seen chewing on several guests who were unlucky when leaving. And then we search throughout the community center looking for any other survivors. And then Owen and the family eventually make their way into the control room to find Claire wounded as the boss destroys the area around her due to frustration of the park now having this reputation. He talks about how everything is ruined thanks to her, and then eventually Troodons get into the control room and begin attacking the boss, allowing the heroes to escape the room and escape the boss. We then have a very similar situation to the first Jurassic Park ending, where the heroes are surrounded by several of the dinosaurs, but the T-Rex comes in and attacks the other dinosaurs, giving our heroes enough time to leave the island. Our Jurassic World 2 will have all the same dinosaurs from the first Jurassic World film. The first act for this is very similar to Fallen Kingdom. Owen and Claire are tasked with getting the dinosaurs off the island. The plan is to load them onto several boats and bring them onto the mainland and brought to a sanctuary. The heroes work with a group of scientists and hunters to track and capture all the dinosaurs. Act 2 then takes place on the boats. The scientists are running studies and figuring out what the best way to handle these animals are. Again, I do not want to give these set of movies more credit than they deserve, but the underlying question of whether or not it is ethical to cause a second extinction for these creatures is a very good thought if, once again, it is executed correctly. But as the boats get closer to the mainland, a group of activists attack the boats, causing a stir with the dinosaurs, and then causes the ships to crash onto the mainlands. And this leads to Act 3, which is something I'm very excited for because the T-Rex in San Diego is such a good scene. And then there are so many amazing analog horror videos on YouTube by so many different creators. I think that is where we highlight the horror element of this movie, showing a lot of different point of views, security footage, camera footage from all these random people as the dinosaurs are roaming the mainlands and becoming parts of these cities. The military is eventually called in to try to handle this threat, but are overcome by all the different types of dinosaurs. The raptors outsmarting them and maneuvering differently than they expect. The Troodons being smaller and able to take them out from like the legs down. The T-Rex, of course, being the T-Rex. A lot of the herbivores having a lot tougher skin. So it's just being overwhelmed with something they were not prepared for. This movie then ends with Owen and Claire seeing all of this go down and preparing for the new future ahead. Here is where I deviate from the path that the actual Jurassic World took. We are skipping 100 years into the future, and we see Earth and how it has now become a mix of what we've known, and it's starting to revert back to how it looked millions of years ago. Now, I know evolution and all that takes several thousand years at the very least, but we are slowly seeing that change. And this is very much an apocalypse movie. This movie will have all the dinosaurs from the other Jurassic World films, as well as Spinosaurus and the Therizinosaurus. We once again follow a family, as well as their small group of survivors as they journey across the new America. They are on the search for a safe zone that is essentially becoming a sanctuary for humans as they work on building a new society. And Act 1 mainly follows getting to know this new group, how the world has changed so much in 100 years is a lot. This will introduce a very small group of people who lived from the previous life, but a lot of people who have been born into this world of dinosaurs being alive again. Act 2 will have a lot of different suspense sequences as they're traveling across America. One such would be they discover they are in the Therizinosaurus territory, causing the survivors to stealthily maneuver through, trying to stay out of sight and being as quiet as possible as they are moving through. We can have them fishing for food, which eventually has the Spinosaurus appear and leap from the water, grabbing one or multiple of the survivors. We can even have a scene where the survivors realize they are in the middle of a raptor nest and have been getting stalked for several miles by velociraptors. I would even love to include a scene similar to in Disney's Dinosaur, where the Carnotaurus finds the other dinos under the waterfall and it's peeking in and out and then goes in. I would love that, but for it to be a family of T-Rexes, and then they push the survivors further into that cave dwelling where they run into Troodons, and you see their glowing eyes in the darkness of that cave. Act 3, this movie essentially ends with the remaining survivors making it to that new society, that new sanctuary, but they are being hunted by the T-Rexes. The survivors make it to the new group and they work on defending the sanctuary, and this eventually gives this group of survivors hope that they can live to see the new world again, or the old world, however you want to talk about that, the more modern society. So I know I sped through those last two movies quite quickly, but it is one of those things. It's a lot more about the sequences than the overall. This person does this person does that. Where it's more, this is just the underline of what needs to happen, going from A to B. For the first Jurassic World film, I want to break it down a little bit more, just so it was clear it wasn't just the same exact as the Jurassic World we got. But please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I do read them, and I appreciate any and all feedback. Also, let me know what movies or franchises you would love to see me go over in the future. Again, thank you all for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell. It truly means a lot to us here at Plaid Couch. And I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.